we go. We're recording now. And so we'll record it. And it stays on Facebook Live too. So you can always come back and look at it later if you have to leave. It will reside there, and it will also reside on our YouTube channel. So here we go. Abby Schneiderman, co-founder and co-CEO of Everplans, is an industry expert in the areas of digital estate planning, technology, and consumerism. Abby is a Forbes.com contributor and has been featured in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and CNBC. Adam Seifer, co-founder and CEO of Everplans, has helped create multiple huge online communities and networks and is an inventor on the social networking patent now owned by LinkedIn. And Newman serves as Everplans editorial and educational director and has spent his career as a writer, editor, and content leader for Maxim.com, Hachette Filipacci Digital. I hope I said that right. I always have one word in this that always tricks me. And other lifestyle properties. All three authors live in New York City. So with that, I will put the stage to you all, and we'll see you in about 20 minutes or so.
Thank you so much, Julie, and to Warwicks. It's great to be here. Adam, Jean, and I are the authors of In Case You Get Hit by a Bus, How to Organize Your Life Now for When You're Not Around Later. And we're also the team behind Everplans, a company that's all about helping you get prepared for the unexpected. Our mission has always been to make sure that people get a plan in place ahead of time so that in the event that something happened, you'd have everything in place and that your family would have access to all the information and documents that they would need. And this book is really a culmination of everything that we've learned over the years and will empower and inspire everyone to get a plan in place.
Yes, and many people have experienced the disaster that unfolds when something does happen, an emergency occurs, and family members don't have access to everything. And of course, with what we're all experiencing with this pandemic, that's an even bigger deal. And when we started writing In Case You Get Hit by a Bus well over a year ago, we obviously didn't know the world was going to change the way it has. And here's a photo of me with my family, I think in the first week of the pandemic. Remember when masks were still just a novelty? And we address this in the book's introduction, and I'd like to read you an excerpt from the book to set the stage. For more than 10 years, we have been obsessed with helping people get their lives organized in case something unexpected happens. By far, the most difficult part of our mission used to be convincing people that the unexpected actually happens and that unexpected things could happen at any time, like getting hit by a bus, as our not-so-subtle title suggests. And then at the beginning of 2020, the entire world was hit by a bus in the form of a pandemic. The unexpected, the very thing our company was built around, became reality for just about everyone on the planet. Life as we knew it ground to a halt. Those families that could hunkered down to minimize the impact, and most everyone feared the worst. But there were undeniable bright spots too. A warm text from a friend you lost touch with years ago, a post on social media from someone on the road to recovery, a former coworker checking in to see if you were okay. Group video calls with family members became the norm, a chance at least to see each other's smiling faces and to poke fun at parents who spent half the call trying to figure out how to turn on their cameras or microphones. Birthdays, holidays, and graduations were celebrated remotely, but we could all still be together. These were the moments that made us forget how tough everything had become and focus on what's really important, the hope and strength that we get from those we love, who themselves take strength from us in return.
The feelings of hope and despair that arise during a crisis can often motivate us to make lasting positive life changes. But as memories fade and normal routines return, that feeling of hope and purpose can diminish. This book is intended to help you renew, reinforce, and remind yourself of that hope for the rest of your life. And we believe planning for your family and loved ones is the key. Our mission has always been to help as many people as possible prepare for the unexpected. That mission to help people ensure that their family isn't left unprepared when the unexpected strikes has taken on an even greater, more solemn importance now, but really it was always that way for us. Over time, as more and more people started using Everplans, the company that we have been creating for many years, we realized that our site wasn't about death. It was about life, because getting everything organized lets you live to the fullest, knowing that you're prepared for anything, having done your very best for those that you love. And that's what you'll find in the book, a plan to do just that, and it's easier than you think. Here's a photo of my 2 kids over the summer. And speaking of loved ones, a good question to consider as you get started: what's important to you? Most people simply say family, but we want you to go deeper than that. What's really important to you? It doesn't have to be one thing. Our lives aren't that simple. It might be something that hurts a little or even makes you uncomfortable to think about, because being challenged can spring us into action. We all have different motivations. Maybe you witnessed the chaos a friend experienced after the death of a family member and don't want your own family to suffer the same fate. A parent might be terrified at the prospect of their young children being raised by an unfit guardian, or worse, in foster care. Money is often the cause of most issues, and perhaps you don't want your family going to war over what you leave behind. Or maybe it's as simple as you waking up in the middle of the night, completely wrought at a pandemic that went from a story on the news to our new reality. Once you have a clear vision of your purpose, think of it as a picture-in-picture box on a TV screen following you around throughout the entire book. That picture might have an image of your kids, your spouse, your partner, your siblings, your puppy, or even a person that you loved who's now gone. But when you get discouraged or overwhelmed, take a second, visualize that image in your head, and then repeat this mantra: this is why I plan. So now you know a little bit more about where we're coming from, and Jean's going to give the framework in which we help you get your entire life in order without losing your mind.
Thank you, Abby, Adam, and Warwick. We're so happy to be here. And the book is broken up into 3 levels, and each builds on the previous one to help you gather and organize all the stuff that you already have, the things that you want or you need, and ways to add personal touches to truly make it yours. Now, even though the book covers every possible component of a person's life, it's all broken down into really easy to digest pieces to prevent you from getting overwhelmed. And we want you to kind of get an idea of each level. So Abby's going to kick us off by going through level 1.
Yeah, level 1. We start things off by helping you get all of the following things in your life under control, which includes a system for managing all your passwords and secret codes. That's a big one. Your money and assets organized so that you don't have a panic attack. An instruction manual for your home and your vehicles. And a decluttered address book where your most useful contacts rise to the top. And Adam and Jean know that I'm still working on this one. But if there's one thing that we mention repeatedly in the book, it's passwords. It's almost comical how many times we mention them, and we have no regrets, because they've become such a vital part of our lives in so many ways.
So the average internet user has more than 130 different accounts, and each of those accounts, of course, requires either an email or a username and a password. And so how do you think most people keep track of them? According to a Pew Research Center study, 65% of people say they keep them all in their head. Yeah, that's right. Memorization is the dominant method, which means either everyone is a super genius, I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night, or what they're doing is they're reusing the same passwords for multiple sites. And we all know at this point that that's just asking for trouble. And beyond the password issue, unlike your physical possessions, digital assets aren't always obvious. Unlike paintings or bicycles or your 70s vintage lunchbox collection, they're not lying around the house. And so they can be lost or rendered inaccessible if you don't get them organized. And when we say digital assets, we're talking about the hardware and the software. And so it includes your phone and your computer and your iPad, as well as everything else that's online or in the cloud, like your social media, your shopping, your entertainment, websites, your rewards programs, your family photos and videos, and so much more. And this is all together referred to as a digital estate plan. And we cover it from multiple angles throughout the book. And I don't want to give away any spoilers and ruin the surprise, but we start the book with passwords and we end with passwords. As Abby just said, they're just that important these days. And another important aspect we cover in level 1 is managing your home and your important contacts.
Stop for just a second and think about all that goes into running a household. This is actually one of our favorite illustrations from the book and shows just how menacing a house can be if you don't know the ins and outs. There are dozens of things that you have figured out over the years to help your home operate smoothly, which is why the book explains how to create something that we call a home operating system, which is a helpful and easy to compile instruction manual for your home. And we also provide a system to help you get all the important contacts in your life organized, which can help your family in so many ways, whether it's for something routine, during an emergency, or for when it's time to settle your estate. You'll realize that level 1 is about what you already have in order and getting that organized. And as we move on to level 2, you'll notice that we start adding some more elements into the mix.
Correct, because level 2 has some of the more traditional aspects of estate planning, like the documents and directives, as well as a deeper dive into your digital world. So what you'll have accomplished after this level will be, you'll know how to get a will and a power of attorney in place, as well as knowing how to establish a trust. You'll be able to organize all your bills and debts into a neat, non-depressing pile, how to compose what we call a personal medical journal and know everything you need to know about healthcare directives. And you'll have brought order to every single one of your digital accounts and services that you use. This level can seem stressful because it involves things that either, seem complicated, they seem expensive, or they might be things you just want to avoid. But we demystify all of it and help you realize that by doing this, you're actually removing stress from your life. Adam has a personal example involving a healthcare directive that really helps bring this whole concept down to earth.
Yeah, Gene. So this is my mom, Joan, and this is where I get to talk to you about the importance of medical directives, which are often called advance directives. And an advance directive at its core is the combination of a living will, where you specify what treatments you do and do not want, and the naming of a healthcare proxy, which is somebody that you trust to make decisions for you if you can't make them. And the importance of this really just can't be overstated. And I experienced it with my mom, who unfortunately died near the end of 2019 after a really tough battle with cancer. And I was fortunate enough to have taken a little time several months before to sit down together with her and my dad. And we straightened out her living will and her healthcare proxy. And then as a bonus, we got my dad's done at the same time. And we discussed what was really important to her. And, it was a weird conversation. It was really tough to get going. But once it did get going, it just started to flow. And when the end came and ultimately she wasn't able to communicate anymore, I knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted to be home. And I also knew what she didn't want. And so because of that, there were no dramatic arguments with anybody in my family. And I wasn't tortured then, and I'm not tortured now, wondering if the decisions that I had to make were the right ones. That little bit of communication and planning, it really gave us all a lot of peace, and it gave her control over her end. And there was a study done by Stanford University that found that more than 80% of patients say that they wish to avoid hospitalizations and high intensity care at the end of their lives, and that they would prefer to die at home. But their wishes are often overridden. And while there are never any guarantees in life, having medical and legal documents in place will definitely increase the likelihood of you getting what you want. And one of the great things about advance directives is that they're free to do. You don't even need an attorney to execute them. And we actually have templates for every state on our website at everplans.com. And we also have a link in the book that'll show you where to go on everplans.com so that you can search for your state and get the templates and get your advance directive done once and for all.
We walk you through all of this in the book, along with a quick, easy to understand reason as to what each of these legal or official documents provide and the decisions that you need to make. Here's a quick overview though. Number 1, your will. Who gets your assets, and do you need to name guardians for any dependents? Power of attorney. Who should be making financial and legal decisions on your behalf if you can't? Advance directives, as Adam was just discussing. Who should be making health decisions on your behalf if you can't? And what sort of treatments do you want? When boiled down, it's that simple, and you'll find that most of your effort won't be in doing the paperwork, but really in making the decisions. And finally, trusts. How to protect assets and even what trusts are in the first place, because they can get really complicated, and I still find them a little bit confusing. But here are some questions for everyone here to think about. Do you have any of these documents in place already? Have you put off creating them? Do you want them, but you're just not sure where to start? One of the goals of the book and Ever Plans is to make sure that you create the plan that's best for you and your family. So definitely don't hesitate to contact us with questions or concerns that might be keeping you from crossing these documents off your to-do list. And this brings us to the final level in the book, which focuses on personalization.
And the final level does allow you to personalize your plan with a slew of finishing touches, which include an organizational plan for all your meaningful photos, recipes, and family heirlooms, a record of your personal history, interests, beliefs, and life lessons, so everyone remembers you the way that you want to be remembered, a model for writing letters and recording videos that your family, friends, and loved ones can cherish for the rest of their lives, a complete understanding of everything, and we mean everything that goes into planning a funeral. And that we even include some templates for writing an obituary if you're up for something like that. But the thing that I learned working with Abby and Adam all of these years, they, like many people, are obsessed with food and they love to cook, so much so that I said, we have to include, each one of you pick one of your favorite recipes, and we want to include it word for word in the book so people can understand how they could start capturing their own recipes so other generations, people can be passed down and these aren't lost forever. So now what I'd like is the master chefs to explain their creations and what organizing recipes means to them. And Abby, you get to go first.
Well, recipes are extremely important to me, as I'm sure they're important to many people here. My late beloved babysitter, Lydia, used to make these incredible empanadas, and she shared the recipe with me before she died. And every time I miss her, I make the empanadas and they bring back these incredible memories. Plus, I get to share them with my kids now, which creates new memories for us. I didn't actually include that recipe in the book. I shared something different, which is my mandel bread recipe that was adapted from my grandmother's and my mom's recipe. It's a cookie recipe, if you don't know what mandel bread is. And you can see me here with my sister showing my daughter, Danny, how to make them. Adam actually went a more savory route.
Yeah, I chose something just a little spicier, and it's my chili recipe that I've been perfecting for like 30 years now. And there's a picture of it in my favorite yellow pot that was my grandmother's that I always used to make my chili. And the recipe is in an Excel spreadsheet, and it automatically recalculates all the ingredient amounts based on the number of people you're serving. And it includes replacement options if an ingredient is hard to find. And it also has tips like reminding you not to rub your eyes when you're handling the peppers. But this notion of passing along highly meaningful family recipes, it plays into a host of other aspects that we include in the book to help you keep your legacy alive. Think of all the personal lessons, and tips, and knowledge that you might want to leave behind, whether it's information about your family history that nobody else knows, things that you've loved about your life, or lessons that you want to pass on to future generations. And technically, when you put it all together, it's called an ethical will. But in the book, we call it Spill Your Life, and we break it up into 6 rounds, so it feels like a little bit like a game show. And this stuff might seem kind of obvious, but when you're answering them, you'll realize, how many of these questions do I wish I could ask somebody that's no longer around?
And along these same lines, here's something that I'm sure we can all agree with, which is helping others. Giving to charity is great, as is devoting your time to a cause. If you've done work to help others, whether it's regularly volunteering for events, being a big brother or sister, manning a phone for a telethon, or giving donations to organizations or institutions that you're proud to support, perhaps you've even gone a step further and allocated money from your estate to make sure the money gets to the right place. These details should be clear and direct so the people you leave behind know to continue to support these causes in your honor. One of the things that we stress over and over, aside from sharing passwords, is the importance of this type of communication.
Yeah, communication is central to just about everything that we cover, because sharing this information, your wishes with others is ultimately what makes a plan complete. And we also know it can be tricky to talk about some of these things with loved ones. Talking with family can be littered with emotional and sometimes suspicious landmines. And then when the topics include money and medical issues or even death, it can be even more terrifying. And consider for a second that people would rather talk about no longer being on Earth than talk about their finances. And the Wells Fargo study that's pictured here, and which is also included in the book, also revealed that although people aren't comfortable talking about money, it's one of the biggest stresses in their lives, often causing sleepless nights. And so we offer plenty of tips on how to eliminate the fear and the stress from these topics, and also how to break the ice so that you can get your family talking and planning together.
So thank you so much. This barely scratches the surface of what we cover in the book, and we can't wait for you to read it and get your own plan completed and out of the way. And if you think the book isn't for you, I just have one more story before we start taking questions. When I first started the company with Adam Everplans, I was explaining the concept to my parents. And my dad, who fancies himself an expert planner, said, I don't need this. All my legal documents and important plans are with our estate attorney. And then my mom interrupted and said, but wait, Milton, who's our estate attorney? So you might have a folder with legal documents and instructions or file with an attorney, but our lives are made up of so much more. Plus, if no one knows where it is or who you did it with, it could be like you never did it at all. The first step is getting started. The book helps you get started, and so much more. So thank you to Warwick's for having us. We're here to answer any questions, and I'll hand it back to you, Julie.
Okay, we're back. Hi. So, oh my God, so many, like I said, when I was talking in the green room earlier with everybody, I said, trust me, I'll have a ton of questions. The tip about passwords is just genius, because it seems so like you don't have to think about it, but it is one of those things that I don't think anybody really thinks about that. When you're thinking about a loved one passing, it's their password. It's like, wow, that was kind of one of those for me. Here's a question for you. And then I've got a couple coming in from the for Facebook too. Personal question, because my husband thinks that he's got everybody listed as a beneficiary, so therefore doesn't need a will or a trust. True, false? Give me a little info on that.
So I'll take the will part. Whether or not you get a trust, I think, is probably something you should discuss with an attorney or a financial advisor, because it's a little bit more complex and sort of set you up for different things. But a will is still really important. And I can give you a personal example on my side. My wife's dad, Marvin, who was a great guy, died totally unexpectedly about 3 years ago. And we didn't think he had a will, but we weren't sure. And so we ended up spending days looking around, trying to find it. And then, of course, we didn't find it. But because he didn't have a will, there was no official executor for the estate. And if there's no executor for this estate, that means someone, and in this case, my poor wife, Carrie, had to petition the court, basically go in front of a judge to be allowed to become the administrator of the estate. And then we had to put up a personal bond in order to do that. And that was all just so that she would have the lovely privilege of shutting down bank accounts and credit cards and dealing with all the crap. And so I think that if you think that you don't need a will, you're probably wrong, because you're about to dump a big, hairy problem on somebody that you should really care more about than that. And then on top of that, if you happen to have children that are still minors, you absolutely need a will, because that's where you name guardians for your children.
So the beneficiary thing that's great, but you have to have a will to, like, if you have stock or whatever, that you've listed somebody as a beneficiary on their account.
Right. So yeah, that'll
somebody still has to execute that.
Right. It'll take care of that one thing, but that still leaves 999 other things that somebody will still have to deal with. And it's so difficult. A bank will not talk to you. eBay, Amazon, Apple, none of them will deal with you unless you have an official document from the courts saying that you're an executor or that you've become a court-appointed administrator.
Yeah. Yeah. So many things. Okay, let's get to some of these over here. I'm going to go to a different screen here. Okay, this is from Amanda. Do you find there are unique challenges and priorities in first and second generation families that you don't see in families that have lived in the US longer?
Who gets to it? Who gets we're always like jumping at some of these questions. When they say first generation family, so people that have lived in America
other countries
longer,
probably, yeah.
I mean, I think that most of the time it depends on the responsibility of how people take in like the traditions that those families probably have, because we notice that families that are open about talking about this stuff and they've been more frequently or they've been through this more, they tend to plan more. One of the things that we've noticed, one of the things Abby even mentioned at the beginning, is what's important to you. People realizing that they actually have to go through this and say, oh, when your grandmother died, when this person died, we went through this hell. So that's why we have these directives, because people fought for, should we unplug? Should we get other treatments? Other people, we have stories in the book about people swooping in and taking possessions just because they thought, oh, you know what? I like this furniture and I'll take it and I'll do whatever I want. And no one else got a shot at it because no one ever allocated it towards them. So a lot of times it does depend on how much the communication is open. But we think generationally, like ideally now, the big issue with generations now, it does come down to passwords, because 2 generations ago, that wasn't even an issue. No one you had like a PIN code to log into an ATM. But now every single thing we do is online. Every benefit, all our insurance, how we communicate, all our photos, all our memories, the recipes people have, those things now will kind of disappear into a void or become inaccessible if people don't share it. So now this generation has to start thinking more digitally and figuring out how you can then keep that alive and move this along to other generations without it just disappearing forever.
And I would just say one other thing, which is that if you have family, if it's the case that you're somebody who lives here, but you have family, who lives in a different country, then it's even more important to make sure that you have critical information that's shared between you in the event that something happens in one of those places and you have to try to, deal with logistics from afar.
Abby, it doesn't even have to be other countries. I mean, you dealt with something about when COVID first hit. It was something within your family that was in other states that was incredibly confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I have a few stories actually about, emergencies happening when somebody's out of state. But Jean, I think what you're referring to is when back in the beginning of March of COVID, really, my aunt, and this was actually on CBS news in LA yesterday and in Dallas the day before. But my aunt and uncle were the 2 first people in Grayson County, Texas, to be diagnosed with COVID. And they were both very sick at the time. I mean, this story ends happily and they're fine now, but they had that crazy COVID story. My uncle was placed on a ventilator. He was put in a coma. They thought he was going to die. My aunt was also very sick. And my adult cousins who had to be there and try to manage everything and figure out everything, they didn't have access to critical information. They didn't know who their parents' primary care physician was to call. They didn't know who their parents' neighbors were to go check on them when they first found out that they were sick, just to even drop off water or food outside their doorstep. I mean, the book tries to help people think about what are those little things that, you just need to make sure somebody else in your life knows about, so that in the event of an emergency, it doesn't have to be in the event of a death, but even in the event of an emergency, the people who need to know how to get access to critical information.
Because that kind of brings up an interesting thing too, because even though somebody doesn't die, if they're put into a medical coma or something, bills still need to get paid, all of that stuff. And so directing somebody even in your life currently and knowing those passwords is a big deal. And
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not in a coma, but you're traveling on a trip around the world and you get stuck somewhere and somebody else has to deal with things back on at the home front, being able to access important passwords or being able to know how to take care of this particular issue with one of your kids. We have people who are telling us that they find this really valuable, even for making sure that the nanny knows information, while the parents are going on vacation. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of different use cases for making sure that all of your important information is documented and that your wishes are known.
I was thinking earlier, I hope you
pets.
guys don't mind. I might have to rename the book if we put it on the counter in case you get hit by a pandemic.
Right.
That might need to be one of the things we put on there, because it's just like, who knew?
Yeah, the whole world got hit by a bus in
Right.
the form of a pandemic. And
Absolutely.
none of us were expecting anything like this to happen. And now, what we found is that this used to be nice to have planning, and now I think people realize this is need to have planning.
For sure. Okay, Susan has a question. She'd like to know what services are on your website, and can we get sample will forms for each state there?
So everplans.com is the company that Adam and I founded close to 10 years ago. It's a secure digital platform that allows people to create, organize, and share and keep up to date all of the most important information, documents, and wishes that they need at their fingertips throughout their lives and that their families might need in the event that something happens to them. And so we help people upload and learn about all the things that the book talks about too. It sort of walks you through everything that the book covers step by step, so that it's getting you to actually either find information, upload information, go talk to a service provider if you don't have certain things, and make sure that all of that is available to at least one person in your life. And we make sure that we get you set up there. And the good news is that if you buy a copy of the book from Warwick's, you will get a free year subscription to our service, which typically costs $75 a year. And in terms of will templates, we link out to online service providers where you can get wills done for companies like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer. There's lots of online services that you can do a will through. There's even free services. There's a company called Free Will. There's another one, Willing. We talk about those in the book. We link out to them on the website. And then, of course, if you have a more complicated situation, we always recommend that you talk with an attorney.
Do you guys, so I'm assuming that Everplan, you have a place for people to put in their passwords and save them there. I'm obsessed by the password thing now.
Yeah. So we do have a place for people to put their primary key passwords, like their main email account or the unlock code for their phone. But we highly recommend that people use a dedicated password manager, something like there's ones called Dashlane is one of them. LastPass is another. There's a bunch of really great ones out there. And what's great about them is that they're optimized around password usage, and they'll integrate with your browser or on your mobile phone also, so that they can sort of auto log you into websites, and they can also choose random passwords for you for each site that you create a new password for. But the master password for those should be in your Everplan.
Got it. Okay, there we go. Okay, Amanda has another follow-up. Sounds like Abby's empanada recipe is a precious commodity. And so she's curious to know, have you often have clients specifically bequeath the recipe to a single entity in a family, and has that caused conflicts? Amanda's all about the conflicts today.
Jean, you should talk about your mom.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she took her recipes so seriously, and there's 2 people on earth that still have them now. My sisters. They will. And she said, and my mom was right. She said she was going to take them to her grave. She did. But those recipes, everyone, was because Abby, when we had this event for my mom, Abby said, I will get those recipes. And one of my mom's longtime friends, known her for, 60 years, said, that young lady thinks that she's going to get them. There is no way. I've been trying my whole life to get them, and she won't. The good thing is we managed to get like the food, the dinner recipes, but her cookies, her cakes, her special things, they are locked up. And now, though, that it's changed from generation to generation, I think my sisters might be a little more like willing to part with them and not be and open it up.
Now I know what I need to do.
Because I look
Now
at
you
what
know where to
Abby's
bribe.
done. What Abby's done, Abby, like, she'd bring in the most amazing things to the office. Both of them, again, being cooks, it's ridiculous how good Abby and Adam are at cooking. And Abby's stuff, she'd bring it in, and we think it was professionally made. We couldn't believe it. So those types of recipes, they can be more open to families. And if someone does want to leave it to one person, then it's up to that one person to either say, okay, I'm going to take these with me, or maybe they could like loosen the grip a little.
But I love the idea of having a way to bequeath a recipe to just one person. Adam, we'll have to talk about that. I feel like
you can do it on Everplans. You can do it on Everplans.
Well, sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah, the special recipes.
Take it to a slightly new level.
Yeah.
It's like a secret locked component of the plan that only that one recipe gets to one person.
And then to close it out, I would love to know, how did this all come about? How did you all get together, and what was like the spark that you guys came up with on this?
Abby, this one's you.
Well, so the original idea for Everplans came about actually when I was planning my wedding. And this was over 10 years ago. I was planning my wedding, and I was using all of these great online resources at the time, the knot.com and Martha Stewart's websites. And I was on them every single day. I was on their apps and their guides and their calendars and their checklists. And I don't know why my brain went from marriage to death, but I started to think about life's over. What's next? What are the other resources that are going to guide me through the rest of my life? And just started looking into it. Adam and I are repeat tech entrepreneurs. And I just started looking into what was out there for life stages, and found that there were plenty of resources for having weddings, plenty of resources for having children, plenty of resources for buying a home, financial planning, even retirement planning. But after retirement planning, the whole area just evaporated. There were no more other life stages covered online. And I mentioned this idea to Adam and said, who's helping people deal with the last life stage? And he said, well, somebody is. That's the biggest life stage that there is. Not everybody gets married. Not everybody has kids, but everybody has to deal with, this inevitable part of life. And we started looking into it. And after about a year of meeting up at each other's apartments and coffee shops, we knew we wanted to work together on this. And we saw that there was this huge gaping hole. And we thought it was just entirely unfair that the most complicated, most stressful, possibly most expensive life stage that you have to go through had no good resources associated with it. And so the original idea for Everplans, our business, which turned into this book, was to create the first modern consumer company focused on what we now call life and legacy planning. And along the way, we were fortunate enough to run into Gene, who, as you said earlier, Julie, had just come from Maxim, doing all of their online. He was their editor-in-chief of all of their online properties. And we said, now we have our secret weapon to make this entire topic more relatable and approachable and more human.
Yeah, because that's the thing, that nobody wants to talk about end of life planning, but when you have, like, I've had a parent who's passed, and I came back to my husband and looked him square in the eye and said, we are not doing that to our children. And so it's a really, and they thought they had things done, and there's so much that you don't know until you go through it. You don't know what you don't know until you're right in the middle of it.
And our whole team is on this mission to, getting people prepared for the unexpected. And The book is an incredible companion guide to the website. But it also is, even if you don't want to use the website, just read the book and start working through it, because you're leaving your family with this incredible gift.
Right. It is because it's like, I swore, I was like, I am not doing that to my kids.
That's one of the things Adam said to me very early on. Adam and Abby would say this, and he goes, even if you think you're the most prepared person, you're still leaving a huge mess behind. So how do we correct that? How do we start identifying all this stuff and make sure that those things you're not paying attention to are actually addressed?
And I like the way that you've done it. You've broken it down, because that's the whole thing that everybody gets very overwhelmed. Nobody likes it, just like nobody likes to start doing their taxes, because it's like, oh crap, I don't want to start doing that, because if something seems like it's too big, but the way you've broken it down, it's like, it sounds like the steps are very manageable.
Yeah, and you don't have to do all of them either, right? You don't have to take like 4 days off from work to do the whole thing. Even if you get going at the beginning and just do the first couple of half steps, you will end up with something that will be incredibly helpful to someone in your family, and you're going to feel a little bit heroic. And chances are you're going to want to keep going bit by bit, but you don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah, that's the thing that is, when you're talking about these big life and death things, it's very consuming. You all, it's been wonderful having you. I have a feeling that people are going to want to have you back to, like, okay, in 6 months, it's like, okay, I've done this, now what?
Sure. We're happy to.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Well, I'm going to take us on. Any last words for anybody? We're off. We'll come to New York and you can all cook for us, right? No.
Sure. I'll send you some empanadas.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm going to take us off of Facebook Live. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Again, it's in case you get hit by a bus, available at Warwick's. So buy that and get a year subscription. That's a pretty good deal there. So good night, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
And there's that.